Well, if you ride long enough, eventually you're going to get a flat tire. And today I got a flat tire. It's a pretty slow leak, but I'm going to show you how you would fix your flat out on the road. First of all, you've got to release your brake to allow your tire to easily dismount. Also, if you have the flat on the rear wheel, you want to shift down into your highest gear, which is actually your smallest sprocket on the back wheel. Of course, if you ever have a flat on the front wheel, you won't have to deal with the chain, but you do have to deal with your dropout, and you will have to release your quick release a little bit more so than you do here on the back wheel. But on the back wheel, once you got your quick release loose, you've got your brake loose, you just push your wheel forward, pull back on your rear derailleur. Your wheel is now ready to be disconnected from the chain, which just takes one little finger, and your wheel is now completely removed. At this point, you can lay your bike down, lay it off opposite of the derailleur side. That way you won't damage anything. And now I'm ready to get my tools out for the repair. What I'll need is some sort of inflation device, which I don't need right away. Of course, I will need my tire levers. Usually 2 will do, sometimes you need 3, but usually only 2 is necessary. And of course, it's always great to carry an extra tube with you, so you don't actually have to patch on the road. Leave that for later on at home. But do carry a patch kit, because if you have more than 1 or 2 flats on the road, you might have to patch while you're out there. Also, patches are sometimes nice to have if you ever cut your tire and you have a slice in your tire. You need to somehow fix that slice. You don't necessarily have to patch it. You can even use a dollar bill or like a power bar wrapper or something to stick inside the tire so that your tube won't stick out through that slice in your tire. Today I still have a little bit of air in my tire because it's a very small hole, probably caused by a thorn or a piece of a wire or something, so I still have some air in there. I'm going to let the rest of it out. After your tires, have no air in your tire, then you use your tire levers. You can now take your tire off. It's not a bad idea at this point to look around for what may have been the culprit that caused the hole. I don't see any thorns or glass or cuts at this point in time. When we reinflate it, we'll look again. Okay, now I need to take off the lock ring off of the valve and take some of my tire levers and start to get the lever underneath the bead of the tire. It's a good idea to kind of just push your tire back a little bit. Get that first lever underneath the bead. Get your next one maybe 3-4 inches away. Get it underneath. The third one, again 3-4-5 inches away, underneath the bead. Pry it off. Once you've got 8 or 9 inches off, the next one you're going to use just to slide around the rim, and the bead will start coming off the rim quite easily. So once you've now got the tire all the way off, reach up into the tire, grab hold of the inner tube, and start to pull it out. You can pull it, at that point, you can pull that tire all the way out, all the way around the wheel, and the only thing that will be holding the tire in is now the valve, which we can push back on the tire and lift that inner tube. So now I'm going to take my new inner tube and I'm going to inflate it a little bit. Sometimes you can just inflate it just a smidgen, just get a little bit of air in it to give it shape. You can even do that sometimes just with your mouth. Just that little bit of air will help get that tube enough shape so that it's easy to get back into your tire. Now you can tell I've started here at my valve, and from there I'm going to lay the tube into the tire all the way around. that that's done, I'm going to go back to the valve, and I'm going to start pushing this bead in. A tire has two beads. It's this portion here that you have one on each side. And before you ever start a tire, putting a tire on, you need to put one bead on all the way around before you start the second bead. Okay, so now I'm starting at the valve, and I'm pushing that bead on. You can tell I'm using my thumbs here, just pushing on 5 or 6 inches at a time. As I get to we're about half, maybe 2/3 of the way done, I'm going to have to start pushing that tube back up and over the rim, and then go back and push the tire bead on a little bit more, a little at a time. And as you get towards the end, it might get a little bit tough for you to push that tire on. Some tires are easier than others. It kind of depends on the manufacturer of the tire and the manufacturer of the wheel. If you get to the point where you can't push it on, it just gets way, way, way too hard, you might have to turn your wheel completely over, go back to your valve, and kind of tug down on your tire. Pull any slack that might be there. You may not feel anything moving, but take my word for it, you'll move it a little bit at a time. So when you do come back and have this little bit left, that you'll be able to push it on with your thumbs. And the other trick, I can easily put this on with my thumbs now, but the other trick is sometimes to turn the tire around like this and use your fingers like this and peel that tire back, and it's on. Now, at that point where that last little bit went on, sometimes your tube will be underneath the bead of the tire, and you don't want that to be the case. You want to kind of push your tire back a little bit. Make sure that the bead is sitting down, it's not sitting on top of that inner tube. Also, when we start to inflate our tire, we'll look at that spot to see if that might be the case. Okay, now I use a CO2 cartridge, which makes inflating your tire a lot easier. This is a micro inflate head, and all you have to do is you have to have a threaded CO2 cartridge, and you thread it onto this, and as it just bottoms out, you want to turn it real quick so you don't lose a lot of the CO2 right there. And it's ready to operate. You're going to make sure your valve is open. I like to put my lock ring on so I'm not pushing up on my valve as I'm inflating it. Okay. So I'm going to put a little bit of air, a little bit of CO2 in it, maybe about 15-20 pounds only. That way I can tell whether my tire is seated, and also at this point I'm going to look around for any possible cuts in the tire where the tube might be sticking out. And as I mentioned earlier, if that is the case, then you'll want to patch that before we go any further. You'll have to take your tube back out, patch that hole, that slice that's in your tire, and then resume putting your new tube back in and getting back to this point. Okay, so I'm going to kind of spin my wheel here. I like to do that, kind of see if my bead is seated. Looking on both sides, it looks good. I don't see any cuts in my tires, thank goodness. So now I can finish inflating my tire. A 16-gram CO2 cartridge will fill a 700C wheel to 220 pounds of pressure, which is plenty of pressure. And sometimes I just leave a little extra that I can use for inflating my tube just to give it shape. If you leave the head on, there will still be some CO2 in it. And another thing I should mention about CO2, tomorrow this tire will have about half the amount of pressure in it that it should have. And so you'll have to just re-inflate it with regular good old air. Okay, so my tire is now completely fixed, and now I need to put it back onto the bike. We had shifted our rear derailleur down into the highest gear. Again, the smallest cog, furthest away from the frame. Now we're just gonna get the wheel ready, set the chain down onto the smallest cog. Let's drop it in. Nope, I didn't put the chain on the smallest cog. Okay, now I'm on the smallest cog. There I am, I've dropped in. Now I like to put my quick release back in its on the brakes, put the brakes back where they should be, and then tighten my rear wheel, because you can always tighten your wheel off center, which you don't want to do. You want to try to center it between the brakes, and then test to make sure that it's spinning freely and not touching the brakes and looks equal on both sides. Once that's done, pick up your mess. Make sure you take your old tube with you so you can recycle it or possibly patch it at home later. And you're pretty much ready for a ride. And while you've stopped, take a deep breath. If you've got an energy gel pack, which I do, break it open and take a gulp of it, because you're going to have to go catch up with your friends. So that's how you fix a flat while you're out on the road. If you have any other questions, call us at the Bike Palace. Look us up at www.thebikepalace.com. Thank you very much.